Shalom. All praises, honor, and glory be unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushua Bashem Akakadash. That belongs to the elder apostles. And honor and salutation to you, Akim, that's doing this work. All right, shalom to the holy elect of the nation of Israel. Excuse me. In this video, I'm gonna just highlight some key points to prove that we as a people are still in slavery. And what I've done is just pulled in well, I said pulled in pulled up, I'm sorry, some slave codes from Wikipedia, just going into different things that we as a nation, I'm talking about the whole nation of Israel, from Jews to Issachar, the Negro to the so-called Mexican and West Indian, Puerto Rican and Cuban and so on and so forth, all the tribes. Um, One thing about our people is we haven't been liberated and freed yet, physically. We're still not a sovereign nation. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Now I want to go down here to the where it says typical slave codes. And I'm just going to highlight some things. Now, according to the 13th Amendment, it tells you that in layman's terms, that pretty much they can make you a legal slave, even though you're already legal property of the so-called United States government. But they can legally enforce slavery upon you, which we never been free to begin with, as a nation. So just go right into it, where it says movement restrictions. Now, I'm going to compare the hardcore slavery to slavery now, and to show you there's no difference. Okay, so it says movement restrictions. Most regions require any slaves away from their plantations, or it says many regions require any slaves away from their plantation or outside of the cities they resided in to have a pass signed by their master. Many cities in the slave states require slave tags, small copper badges that enslaved people wore to show that they were allowed to move about. Now, you notice the prison industrial complex, it's so vast. And it's a home to a lot of the prison Israelites for little small petty so-called crimes, according to Esau's law, which is a wicked, uh, um, basically wicked decrees that Esau has prescribed for our people. As a matter of fact, the scriptures even says that. All right, let's go to the book of Isaiah 10. And when it says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, which are laws, all the laws that Esau created, was the ones that pertains to us was made to affect us negatively, and to oppress us, and to keep us broken down as a people. All right. It says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that right grievousness which they have prescribed. Excuse me. It says to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. And our family structure as a nation is, especially the Southern Kingdom, start beginning with Judah. And I say it just the way you identify, what specific tribes I'm talking about. All right, when you look at the tribes, okay, All right, the tribe of Judah, in particular, the so-called black woman or Negro woman, you know, she's totally against her husband, and there's a wedge between the so-called black woman and the so-called black man, all right, which is Judite woman and men. All right, so you look at what has happened. Many of the Judite fathers are in prison. Okay, and Esau have imprisoned them for, like I said, petty reasons. All right, so they're legally they legally enforcing their slave codes upon those men of Judah. All right, and the rest of us as well. All right, now I've never been to prison. All right, but I do know this as far as regarding the movement restrictions. Um, as far as traveling, currently I'm still on what you would call probation, Esau's probation system. Um, and if I want to leave the state, I have to have a travel pass. All right, which that's what it's speaking about when it says movement restrictions. All right, it's talking about the travel pass. All right, let's go back here for a real quick second. It says life in bondage. It says slaves lived under heavy restrictions, physical and geographical, in their day-to-day lives. Physical confinement was the primary method slave owners used to take away freedom from slaves. Ankle and wrist shackles, for instance, limited mobility, discouraged flight, and were degrading to the men and women who were forced to wear them. In some areas, masters hired out of their skilled slaves to work outside of the plantation. While off the plantation, slaves were required to travel with a tag or pass. Traveling without official permission could result in punishment for the slave and, in some cases, the master. Which, like I said, even to this very day, I'm comparing it to the so-called uh, penal code. Or when you break Esau's so-called penal code, you place on probation or parole. A lot of Israelite men, they get out on parole, what have you, but they have to have a travel pass. Now, whether you are confined in the prison or not, still, to leave this country, you have to have a travel pass. All right, which is you would call your passport. All right, now if you're free, a free man doesn't need permission to go anywhere. He just go where he wants. All right, and if you try to leave without permission, there's a harsh penalty for it. All right. So let's go back to the Wikipedia. It says marriage restrictions. It says most places restrict the marriage rights of enslaved people, and they do that to this very day. When you get legally married, there's so many restrictions that you don't even know about, um, and you won't even know about them until you go through a legal process regarding a legal marriage. Like when you divorce a woman, where there's all kind of legal actions to be taken, and there's laws. And remember, when you get legally married, you made a decision to make the state wherever you married that the third party and the deciding party, the third deciding party of your marriage. It's your legal marriage. All right. And they dictates what they want to do instead of what he or she wants to do. That's involved in the marriage. All right. It says ostensibly to prevent them from trying to change masters by marrying to a family on another plantation. Marriage between people or different races was also usually restricted. You know, that's done to this very day. You know, they have as far as marriage restrictions, like married to other races, meaning like mainly, you want to marry an Edomite woman, it's really against the law, and they just don't enforce it these days, as they were in previous decades. A lot of Israelites that was born, especially in the '60s and was like '70s, '60s on back. Some of those Israelites that was born having an Edomite mother, a lot of them don't know who their father is. Though they know their father is a so-called Negro or what have you. They don't know their father because of that. A lot of times a man was hanged for that. All right. And the woman was despised, and often her baby would be taken from her, and they would kill the baby as well. They used to stump the baby in the ground, like literally stump it to death. Okay. This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 2, verse 14. It says, "Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he robbed? Why is he spoiled?" Well, the reason why is because the Most High, Heavenly Father, punished us as a nation for being disobedient and breaking His covenant, which is His laws, commandments, and statutes. Excuse me. His laws, commandments, and statutes, and we went into slavery. And then what happened was, start with Esau and the rest of the heathens. They helped forward our affliction. Okay, as a nation. All right, and it even tell you that. Matter of fact, let's go to it. It even tells you that. It says they helped forward our affliction. All right. Zechariah 1:15, it says, "And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped for the affliction." And all the heathen, took part in affording our affliction because they even made it to where we lost our nationality. All right. Our identity of being Hebrew Israelites, they helped make that non-existent to us. The scriptures tell you that as well. The book of Psalms, the 83rd chapter. I'm going to get into some more of that Wikipedia as well, But this is the 83rd chapter of Psalms. It says, "Keep not thou silence, O power, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O power. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones." All the heathens have taken crafty counsel against us, all right, and consulted one another to do things to us. Okay, all the tribes, all 12 tribes. All right, verse 4, it says, "They have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." And that's what they did to us. All right. And these are some ways I'm reading about how they cut us off. They made sure that we was always kept in a state of confusion. They made sure that we was kept in a state of confusion by putting these different slave codes upon us as a nation. Because it didn't just happen to one tribe or two tribes or a few tribes. It happened to all of us, right? So it says prohibitions on gathering. Slave codes generally prevented large groups of enslaved people from gathering away from their plantations. Now, you may look at your neighborhood as just my dwelling place, but when you look at it, it's the same as a plantation because at a plantation you would actually work and live there, right? Well, it's no different. You had a place to stay and lay your head, get rest, and then you have to do what? Get up and work. The same thing, we get up and work. We don't feel like it because that's the way we have to survive. As far as having the shelter, food, water, vehicle, all that. All right, there's no difference. All right, you go punch in the clock on your job. Excuse me, you do your different odd jobs as well. All right, and in the midst of all that, one thing they prohibit, and I always knew this as a kid, was a group of people walking or gathering on like on a certain neighbor in the neighborhood, what have you, or walking down the street. As a kid growing up, you had your buddies you play with around the neighborhood, and you play basketball on the little breakaway rims, and the police would come through, roll through, and they would always stop and see what we were doing. I remember that vividly. In the 90s, I was born in the 80s, so the 90s I remember because I was a kid growing up then. And they were actually, the police, which are the slave patrols, also known as paddy rollers. They would come through and check on us and see what we were up to, what we were doing, even though we was just kids, little boys playing around, on basketball rims and stuff like that. All right. And if we got together and hung together, and it was so many of us on one street, they would actually just tell us we can't, we can't gather up like that. Maybe stand on the corner of a street, and they would say you can't stand on the corner. You gotta be in your yard. So there's similarities in that. All right. Now the slave patrols. It says, in the slave-dependent portions of North America, varying degrees of legal authority backed slave patrols by plantation owners and other free whites to ensure that enslaved people were not free to move about at night and to generally enforce the restrictions on slaves. That's what you get today. Like I said, another name for them back then was paddy rollers, but that's what you have today, police officers. You notice that there's a level to law enforcement. You have your police department, and then you have your sheriff. When there's a warrant for your arrest, all right, generally what happens is the sheriff will come out, and they would come out, issue, and enforce the warrant for your arrest. All right, for whatever it may be. Now the slave patrols, they'll get the notification that certain men or women may have a warrant, but that's when they run your name in. All right, unless they go on the raid patrol to catch guys that have warrants. All right, and so at times, what would happen is slaves would basically our people, they would be beaten, sometimes hung and killed if they was trying to run, escape away. Um, Depending on the importance of the Israelite slave, um, and that's pretty much how it would go. You know, if a slave patroller caught you, so they would beat you or even kill you. If there was a bounty on your head, same thing. A bounty warrant, same thing. Um, that goes on today. If you're if you're even not minding your business, still slave patrol can roll up on you at any given moment and just pick with you, which they would do back then often. They would pick with you. You see on movies, so they would stop, Israelite slaves and antagonize them, abuse them, disrespect them, and dehumanize them. All right, these are things that went on. This is in fact, let me get that one first. This is the book of Isaiah. Let's see here. Isaiah 5:13. Therefore my people are going to captivity because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Our people went in captivity because, like I said before, we broke the covenant that the Heavenly Father made between Himself and us. All right. So when we broke the covenant, the Heavenly Father sent our enemies against us, and a lot of times they would, we went into slavery, and then a lot of times they would, a lot of times they would have us doing outrageous things. Once we was under their hands, all right, we was under the heathen's hand. They would do all types of heinous things against us, especially Esau, even the so-called white man, beginning with their elites. Okay, and it still happens to this very day because we're still under the Edomites. All right, verse 15 it says, "And the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled." So what happens is, Salaki, that's the wrong verse. Salaki, I'm in verse 14. It says, "Therefore hell hath enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure, in their glory, in their multitude, in their pomp, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it." Yeah, so that's the thing you have to get in your mind, that we're literally in hell. We're faced with so many extreme conditions of living as a people. That's what it means by hell had enlarged itself. This ain't nothing but oppression for our people. It's a place where we were just broken down and taken advantage of as a people. All right, all of our glory has been turned into shame as a people. All right, the one in Israel is rejoicing right now because we're not in our glorious state. Even though Jake liked to party and everything, but we're still brought really low. All right, so that's what you have today. All right, Shalaki, about that, I ain't trying to read the 15th verse, but let's go back to Wikipedia. It says, I'm going to jump down to punishment and killings of slaves. It says slave codes regulated how slaves could be punished, usually going so far as to apply no penalty for accidentally killing a slave while punishing them. And that's where you have the shootings that's going on today. All right, it says to apply no penalty for accidentally killing a slave while punishing them. There's no penalty for it. Now you wonder why um, guys like George Zimmerman and all those Edomite cops that killed a lot of Israelites doing traffic stops and what have you. All right, Walter Scott's. You have he was shot in the back several times and died. He was a veteran. I remember that. You got the Sandra Bland's. You have the Mike Browns, Laquan McDonald. You have the guy over in Milwaukee. I forget his name. Um, Philando Castile. There's many names out there with the police shootings. It's right in your face right now. But those things are still going on to this very day. And there's nothing being done about it because, you know, there's no punishment for, they say accidentally killed the slave, but there really is no accident. They just straight up killed those Jakes, or which it really should be, they murdered those Israelites. Those Jakes got murdered, man, and nothing was done about it because they're slaves. All right, that proves you're a slave. All right, it says, excuse me. Later laws began to apply restrictions on this, but slave owners were still rarely punished for killing their slaves. Which they was not punished for killing their slaves. All right. It says, well, that's about it. It says, yeah, cause that's all false. All right, so going back to the scripture, there was no penalty for murdering a slave, and that's the way you treat an Israelite slave, man. All right, matter of fact. It's the way you treat, it's the way you treat an Israelite slave. And I put slave. I don't know why I typed that in. But yeah, it's the way you treat an Israelite slave, and basically Esau have taken that and it's basically threw out the window. Yeah, here we go. Cause a couple, I think. All right, let's go. That's that's the point. Yeah. All right. So this is Deuteronomy 15:12. This is all about. I remember the chapter being about how you enslave, how you have slaves. I'm sorry. But this is Deuteronomy 15:12. It says, "And if thy brother, an Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him go free from thee." So basically, it tells you, pretty much, it tell you all the things that you may and may not do to an Israelite slave. Okay, now I'll read some of it. It says, verse 13, "And when thou sendest him out free from thee, thou shalt not let him go away empty." You know, basically, if Esau was to free us, which he didn't free us, but he's supposed to, um, not go out without anything at all. All right, verse 14, it says, "Thou shalt furnish him liberally," and it says, "out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith Yahweh thy power hath blessed thee, thou shalt give it to him. And thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in the land of Egypt, and Yahweh thy power redeemed thee. Therefore I command thee this thing today. And it shall be, if he say unto thee, I will not go away from thee, because he loveth thee, in thine house, because he is well with thee. Then thou shalt take an awl and thrust it through his ear unto the door, and he shall be thy servant forever, and also unto thy maidservant that shall do likewise. So pretty much that's if an Israelite slave want to be a slave perpetually, or he want to leave his master. Now we wasn't even given the opportunity to even go free, to begin with, as a people. We're still living on Esau. We just was transferred his property for the purposes of their industrial manufacturing needs. All right, the industrial manufacturing was starting to boom, started to come alive, and that's the reason why slaves went through that so-called Underground Railroad. It was all getting you geared up for this so-called industrial revolution. You had different manufacturing jobs that was being created. All right. This is Baruch 3:8. It says, "Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments, according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from Yahweh our power." That's true. We're subject to payments. Especially hard taxes and different things we have to pay on. Because first and foremost, we're at a disadvantage financially, and the things we need really far exceed, uh, the money, all right, that we have to be able to afford such things, which we can't hardly. All right, really, we're poor. All right, and so by us being basically forced to work and live in Esau society, we're afflicted with these such things. There's a tax on this, tax on that, tax to drive your car, tax to have a driver's license, tax to have a home, tax to have your utilities. It's always a tax, even when you're incarcerated. It's always a tax. Okay, and no one has spoken on it outside of men of the Lord. As far as us being slaves still. A lot of our people don't believe they're slaves still. They think they're free. But the fact that we're still slaves. All right, they was never free. All right, from the so-called Negro to the so-called Mexican, we're still slaves. All right. Excuse me. This is the book of Zechariah. Speaking on and going back to the murdering of Israelite slaves when they was being punished. Right, Zechariah 11:5. It says, "Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, Blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not." That's a prime example of the last part I read to you, when it says punishment and killing of slaves. All right, possession means owner or master. All right, if you don't know what that word means, I'll get it for you. That's exactly what it means. Possession means owner or master. All right. Pull the word up. It's, anyways, it says haver. I want to pull up the actual word possessor. I don't know why it's not pulling up, but hey, let's go to Google. Shalaki, bear me 1 second. Possessor. Alright. Possessor, it says a person who owns something or has a particular quality. No, yeah, this person who owns something. A person who takes, occupies, or holds something without necessarily having ownership or is distinguished from the owner. Well, what they own is us. We're property of the so-called U.S. government. All right. I don't know why. I don't know why it won't come up on the etymology. It used to come up on there. That's strange. That's it's quite strange. Yeah. Yeah, it's really strange. It used to come up on there. But however, same thing. Same thing. It says possessor anyway, so it says owner, possessor. Another word for owner is master. It's strange. It said one who, so the owner. It said one who owns, one who has legal or rightful title. Your birth certificate, your social security cards, is all a rightful title for Esau to have according to his law. He has the rightful title, which are bond papers on us. All right, so there you have it. You know that links right up. What's the wrong thing? That links right up with that links right up with what I read in the Wikipedia. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, those things are still going on. You know, all the things I read to you in this Wikipedia list of things that they would do to slaves, it still goes on. All right. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 15. It says that which had been is now, and that which is to be had already been. And the Most High, which is the Heavenly Father, required that which is past. So everything that's been done to us as a people, you know, is going to be paid back. You know, all right, double. All right, scripture say doubles. Revelation, the 18th chapter tells you. It says double unto her, according to her works, the cup she had filled for you. Roughly paraphrasing. All right, so you Edomites, you Edomites gonna get double, man. All right, because we had to drink of the cup, which was slavery, and we're still drinking of that cup until the Most High Father redeems us. All right. So with that, I would say, Lord willing, you was edified. And, I just basically just came up with it, just through the Spirit, just came up. I just popped up on my mind. I just said I would do a lesson on it, but Lord willing, it was edifying to you brothers and sisters that may have watched. So next time, I say shalom.